Welcome to UnCeiling You, the podcast that empowers ambitious women to take radical responsibility and break through barriers. I'm Dr. Natalie Luke, your host. Before we dive in, take a moment to download this episode so you can listen anytime, anywhere. If you love what you hear, please share it with your friends or social media network. Your support helps us grow. For those of you ready to take your ambition even further, consider joining our membership community. Imagine what you could achieve with the right tools and network. Our membership unlocks early episodes, practical workshops, and direct connections with inspiring leaders. Head to the show notes to join, download, or share. Now, let's get started with unsealing your potential and watch the ripple effect unfold. I am so excited to talk with you. I picked up three of your books, and you have how many? 4 now? Or
I have authored 2 books and a journal, and my publishing company has published 8 to 10, and then some range of those I've been a managing editor of those and the publisher, and some I'm just the publisher.
Excellent. Well, I just picked up 3 of them. That's all. And here they are, and I loved it. I started off with your first book, and I usually go to the very end of the book to look at what how the story ends, because I really love to think about, well, what kind of twists and turns will I see out of this? And your book, I couldn't put it down at all. Like, I was with my brother and my husband, they were golfing. I got to sit in the cart and I was like, yeah, you guys go hit. I'm reading.
I love that. I love hearing that from readers. And I can tell you, you're not the first one who said that. I warn people when they pick up the book, and I said, don't start it at 9:00 at night, because, you may not get any rest that night. You might finish it, because I've had more than one person text me at 3 a.m. saying, I just finished your book. I couldn't put it down, which I love.
But the thing that is really impressive to me, and what captivated me, is knowing that you are writing this book, you have a publishing company just to start, and you're working in you have a regular day job where you're SVP at a pharmaceutical company. It really intrigued me, and just knowing where you started from this book. You started at a place that was not ideal. You had to go out on your own, or you chose to go out on your own and take care of yourself at the age of 16. You found your money. You worked hard after school. You went to school. You did well. You went to college. It just really intrigued me. And I wanted to, just understand more about you, how you were able to reframe incredibly dark moments and not see them as setbacks, but see them as opportunities for growth. People normally have it better than you, and you went really far. I just loved it. I just loved how you did that. I'd like to know a little bit about your mindsets. How did you train yourself to find growth in adversity? Were there specific practices or mindsets that helped you to choose love and growth over hate and resentment?
Well, this sounds like a 2-part answer. So let me give you a 2-part question. So let me give you a 2-part answer. It has to have been several years ago, 5 years ago now. Someone had sent one of these Facebook quizzes around, right? And it said it was 1 out of 10, and give yourself a point for every childhood trauma you experienced, right? And the person who posted it, I knew from my childhood, so I thought his number was going to be pretty high. And, and I said, well, what's your number? And I think he said 3. And he's like, well, what's your number? And I said 8, right? 8 out of 10, right? There was a lot there, but there was one that I didn't have. And that was somebody who made me feel small, or somebody who belittled me, or someone who said I wasn't good enough. My mom and the community that I was raised in, encouraged me. They said they loved me. I could do anything. I was powerful and I was great. So honestly, you can build on that. And if you don't have that element of, self-worth and self-value and this just belief and hope, and of course my name's Hope, so that was probably a little helpful, but if you don't have that belief that you can do something and that you're positively, wired and guided, that would be the first thing anybody has to work on, because you can't build on something that's not yet there. So
Right.
when I think about how did I, stay that way, or, look in that direction, was because of the foundation I had. So yeah, there was a list of stuff that happened that wasn't
Mhm.
the greatest. And it certainly was tumultuous and chaotic, and food insecurity and housing insecurity was an element, but the element of this foundation of love and this foundation of belief and this foundation of capability is something you can build on. So I'd say that no matter where you're at, if you don't have that, you have to have that first. So I could build on that. Specific practices, you'll, if in it, with when and if you read the second book, Counting Hope, I'm older in that second book, and I have more agency, and I still, my life was a big hot mess in the second
Mhm.
book also, because I was, I was young, and I was making, not the greatest decisions, but I also found my way during that period. And I talk a lot more about the, practices. Certainly when I was younger, it's even hard to understand what those practices might be, but there was just a couple of key things. Number one, you know, take small steps every day, right? It's understand where you want to go, understand who you want to be, but you're not going to get there in one day, right? It's the little choices that you make every single day. That's a little step that changes the way, makes progress to where you want to be or who you want to be. So that would be definitely one a practice that I put it, and I still put it into place every day. My to-do list can be so long, and
Yeah.
so sometimes I just open my book and I'm like, my notebook, and I'm like, I'm just gonna do the next box, and then the next box, right? And so it's just the little steps every day. That's a great way, and then you feel like you're making progress, right? Even if you didn't win the world, or finish the marathon, you feel like you made progress. So that is like a positive reinforcement mechanism. Secondly, I'm not one to spend a lot of time over evaluating problems, or, just continuing to overanalyze those types of things. You absolutely have to understand the problem. You have to understand the root cause, but I quickly pivot to how can we make it better? Or what do I need to do to make it better? I'm just a solutions based person. And so when
Right.
you're looking, again, it's this sort of looking forward, how do I improve, that between those two practices of doing it in small steps, and the looking forward of how could, problem solving instead of
Yeah.
problem focused,
Yeah.
built on that foundation of love and capability. Those are probably the way I got some of these things done.
That's so awesome. And I could see that even in my work. Sometimes we try to solve problems that aren't there. And it's like, wait a minute, hold on. Let's make sure that we have a problem to solve before we spend all this time solving that problem.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point too. Sometimes you just have to understand, okay, that happened, but it's not really a problem. I don't actually need to spend a lot of time correcting it. You in your career, you might, go through performance reviews, and you'll
Good
get
point.
this range of responses, right? Of super great, not so great, and a whole bunch of stuff in the middle. And as an individual, you have to just look at that and say, okay, some of this is true, but I'm going to accept the things that I want to accept and improve on those. And that person may not like this about me, but I'm okay. Or, you know what I mean? Like, you have to say, some of these are not my problem, or not things I'm going to work on. And it's just an active choosing. It's the same thing when you get survey results. Everybody will tell you like 100, but there will be a few things in there that, may not be great. And you have to choose. You're like, well, only two people said this. So this is not something we're going to spend a lot of time with.
Yeah. Or I'm going in that direction and I really don't need this aspect.
Yeah,
So I'm going to let it
absolutely.
go.
Yep, let it go.
I love that. So, just kind of moving on, you talk a lot about taking accountability for your life and
Mhm.
choosing which problem you're going to focus on as part of
Yep,
taking accountability, which is sometimes people have a hard time struggling with, especially in the face of societal limitations like you can't do this or you shouldn't do that, or
yep,
negative workplace
yeah,
dynamics.
yep.
What advice would you give to people who feel like external factors like difficult colleagues or unfair treatment are holding them back? And how can you take control of your narrative and your career path?
Again, more, these are loaded questions. These are great questions. I think it's always you have to go back to understand what you can control and fully accepting yourself. This is a lesson that I have to keep learning. Just talked about it with someone else earlier this morning.
Good
Yeah,
timing.
there's been times where I get going in my career and then all of a sudden I feel like all I'm trying to do is make my boss happy. Right? Like he or she wants it this way and so I'm going to try it that way and she wants this and I'm going to do that. And then that leads into the space where they hate what I'm doing and I hate what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I have to sort of step back and say, no, I know what I'm doing. I'm actually pretty smart and I'm really good at this and I can do this and I'm going to do it the way I want to do it. And with that autonomy and authority and accountability. And then my boss loves it. They're
Mhm.
all like, yes, exactly. And I was like, yes, exactly. And all of that thing that was happening was all just in my own mind. So, and there's been a few, transformative events for me in the last several years. One was as a retreat that I've held, and it just really allowed me to step into that space and really step into my whole self. And when I was getting that feedback or something, I was really comfortable saying, that's not mine. Like, that's yours, right? Like, I know this work is fantastic. So, just really understanding and being, I mean, if you really love your work and you're really putting all your best effort into it and that's the truth, then all the noise from external factors, that's their problem. That's them, whatever's happening in their own mind. Now, having said that, work conditions can be, horrible. They can be bananas. And you absolutely, every single individual, every single employee, every single leader always has to take a step back and say, am I in the right place? Can I be successful here? If not, make those changes, make a change to get yourself in the right place. Because if the environment is so toxic or the conditions are so bad, and you can't make improvements or you can't make a difference in that space,
Mhm.
then you got to make the change. So that decision is available to every person all the time. And you absolutely need to make sure you're taking care of yourself, both professionally, and personally and mentally. And
Mhm.
all of those factors have to go into that decision making.
Yes, I love it. And I think for me also, when I sat down in the morning and I said to myself, or asked myself, what is it that I want to feel today?
Yeah,
What
it's a great,
feelings?
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
And then it's like, okay, so what do I have planned today? What meetings? Okay, how do I approach that meeting so that before, during, and after, I feel the way I want? It was
That's great.
transformative for me.
I bet it was. I bet it was. I bet that's a great tool for somebody to use is what do I want to feel today? What do I want when I look back at the end of my day, when I'm making dinner or eating dinner, what do I want to say? This day was X, Y, Z. And really keeping that in the forefront of your thinking has to be a great way to do
It was fantastic. And this is really wonderful discussion.
it.
So one of the themes of this podcast is about using imagination and ambition as a driving force for change. And we talked about that, how do I want to feel today?
Mm.
Also, where do you want to go? So what role do you feel imagination plays in helping you define what you want, especially when it comes to generating stability, safety, and fun? how do you balance that imagination and dreaming with the ambitious work that you want to achieve?
Well, you've seen that. Have you seen that diagram where it says, here's your comfort zone?
Hmm.
And on the outside of the diagram is, here's all the good things, right? That really resonates with me, right? And I probably have some natural ability to just like put it out there and just go for it, right? So, because, and we'll go back to that first book, because I was raised on a commune, which was super chaotic, and there was just a lot of, you know, change all the time. I am probably one of, I am comfortable with change. Now, as I've gotten older, I've gotten maybe a little less, but, but, and that's not true for everyone, as, being comfortable with change. So being able to sort of reach out and stretch your thinking to anything is possible. Again, that was built on some of the foundation of how I was raised and how people said you can do anything and you can be anything. And so that's a little bit more comfortable for me. So if folks aren't in that ability, that's where you got to do the reach. So don't be afraid of failure. Number one, like, fail fast, right? Ask the questions, right? Like, you will 100% get none of the raises that you don't ask for, right? Like, just ask, right? Ask your boss to pay for you to go to the conference. Ask your boss to pay for your training, because they're certainly not going to do it if you don't ask.
Right.
And they're, quite frankly, having been in leadership for a long time, and most leaders, they're like, yeah, even if they can't pay for it, they love the fact that you're asking, right? Because that means you're thinking about who you want to be and how you want to improve. So, you know, do those couple of things where it's like, don't be afraid to fail, because failure is a learning. And it's in our society, even that word failure, it's a four-letter F word, right?
Yeah.
And, fail, like, it's so uncomfortable for us. Now, as I've gotten older, like, I'm super comfortable with it, because that I've learned that that's actually my fastest way to learn something, right? Is, even if I don't hit it out of the park, I've learned a lot. I'll give you one example.
Quick break, everyone. If you're enjoying this episode, remember to download it for offline listening and share it with your friends or network. Sharing helps us reach more ambitious listeners like you. Want to take your growth to the next level? Join our membership program for just a few dollars a month and gain exclusive benefits designed to support you. Early access to episodes, bonus content, and even a say in future topics. Don't just listen, be part of the journey. If you're a woman aiming for management, but stuck in the experience trap, listen up. You're talented, ambitious, but hitting a wall. You need experience to get a management role. But how do you get that experience? Introducing Unsealing Your Career, the book that's breaking the experience trap. Discover how to showcase your leadership potential, even without prior management experience. Transform your project skills into leadership assets and build a strategic career path. Ready to climb the ladder? Grab the book, Unsealing Your Career, today, at any place you prefer to purchase books, and start your journey to the top.
Okay. So when I started partnering with the CEO and founder of Brave Women at Work, she had me on her podcast, and she asked me she's like, hey, I want to write a book. And I said, I can do that. I had never written an anthology before. So we did that, and we learned along the way. In our first set of authors, we said, hey, this is a learning process for us. Do you want to go on this journey with us? But about a year later, she says, I want to host a retreat. And I said, I have a business case for that. So I dusted off my business case that had been sitting on a shelf for 4 years or however long, and put it together within a couple of weekends. I had the post in, we were opening registration. The retreat was in February, and January 1, I had 0 guests signed up, right? And, I'm talking to her, I'm talking to my husband. I'm like, what are we going to do here? And so I had to make a decision. I said, okay, what is my minimum number of guests, that I want to hold, even if I lose a ton of money or not, even if I lose money, I just need to get through it, because I need to get all of that learning in of hosting my first full retreat. super lucky. I had 13 people sign up in, in the month of January. People people are motivated to do new things in January. So I had 13 people to sign up, which was great because my target was 15, and we hosted it. And Natalie, I learned a lot. I learned a lot, but it was that willingness to say, even if I fail, that I have to get this failure in so that I could learn what it was like to do the retreat and to do all the things that I needed to do differently the second one. So we've hosted our second one. The third annual one is actually registration open today. And then a year after that, she says, well, I want to do a leadership conference. And I said, oh my God, let's do that. So we start, that registration is open for that. Our very first leadership conference is in June of 2025. It's called Thrive in 25. We are so excited about it. It's in the greater Chicagoland area, and registration is open for that too. Being willing to fail on that first retreat allowed me to take all these other subsequent steps. And everybody has a different risk tolerance. And I'll just say this because it feels like there's a couple of things I've said on this call. Certainly there's a certain level of financial comfort that I've achieved that allows me to sort of take on those risks. And certainly when I was earlier in my life and, getting $500 extra to do anything might have been $1 million. You have to admit to some of that is because you've reached a comfort level that allows you to do that too. Yeah. So I'll just put that out there because, had you had the same conversation with me 30 years ago, I would be like, I need $20 to put in my gas tank right now. So failing fast is a little bit of a privilege once you get to that point where you can.
Yeah. Well, and I think just trying to do something different, even if it's to raise your hand during a meeting and saying, hey, I'm wondering about this, and getting your perspective, and that perspective may be different from somebody else. That is a risk. And it's cost you nothing to say something.
Yeah. And in your career, you develop little techniques on how to do that. So I often might use humor. What I used a lot early in my career, and actually I had to unlearn, was kind of playing the, stupid card. Like, I don't know, what about the. So I've been a project manager for a lot, or I somehow end up in those roles a lot. And as a project manager, you can say, well, I don't know, because you may be working on a project with the technical information that you actually don't know about. So it allows you to ask those weird and offhand questions. But there's a point in my career where I was like, I really can't use that technique. I can't use the, I'm like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing kind of thing, because it worked against me at a certain stage in my career. So I had to develop sort of a new way, but then not a new way. It's just you get to be a lot more direct. You can just ask the question without sort of softening it. You can just ask the question because you have a measure of positional power or experience where people allow you to ask that question without being, without taking it a certain way. So.
And also, maybe some people don't want to explore the question that you asked because it means maybe the project's not going to move forward, but it's so important to still ask the question.
One other technique, and it actually fits quite well with our whole conversation so far, is when I always push folks. I'm like, if you had endless amounts of money, endless amounts of time, endless amounts of resources, what would you do? Because that unlocks the barriers that they automatically place. And when you're facilitating that, you like, some people can go there, but most people, you have to spend time really, you're like, okay, but if you had, and they're like, but we don't. You said, yes, I completely understand you don't. But if you could create dream state What
Right.
does dream state look like? And when I do career development work with people, which I've done hundreds of times, I do the same thing. I always have them create a dream job, even
Mhm.
if it's not something, I've once had somebody say, is like, well, he was a chemist. And he's like, well, I want to be the GM of the Cubs. So not something that he would ever probably really be, but two things happen when you put that on the board and you
Mhm.
keep it on the board, right? You're like, that was my dream. I want to, don't want to lose sight of it. But then all of the things and the type of work and the things that, is part of that work, a part of that job, those are things that he likes to do. So you can apply that to all of the other career work. But I do that in projects. I do that in career development of what does dream state look like for you? And that helps people. That may be a better answer to your question of how do you get people to think outside of that, is really to push them to say, let's just create dream state. Again, what's the harm? You're
Yeah.
just doing it by yourself. If you want to do it with your husband or your partner, right? Like, just create dream state, see what it looks like.
And I know for me, I love to take walks, and it's like, man, life is great, but what can make life better?
Yeah.
Like, and then I'm daydreaming while I'm walking. It's so
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah. Well, I just read an article 2 days ago about Steve Jobs and the walking. So there's this whole theory about the magic of walking, how it unlocks a
Mhm.
lot of your other thinking. So his theory was about this 10-minute walk, and this article was about, all of the great science behind what walking does. And you just described the same thing. Right? You're daydreaming,
That's
you're thinking beyond, right? Because maybe there's something with the moving and all of the other bits, but it allows you, to sort of stop creating the barriers and just seeing the barriers to what you want to look, what you want to achieve.
so. This is a question for an exclusive question for the people in the membership site. And I'd love for you to go just a little bit deeper into your personal process, maybe the second book, but something that's not in your second book. When you faced some of your toughest moments, or even maybe lately, whether it was in your career or your personal life, what was the single most powerful practice or belief that helped you persevere and come out stronger on the other side?
And I can't answer my previous answers. So I'm trying to think of an example so I can tell a little story, because that's usually helpful. So, when I do, I can think about some of the decisions and things that I really, when you think about life-changing, transformative decisions where it's a before and after,
Mhm.
right? Where it's like, before I made this decision, my life looked this way. And after I made this decision, it looks this way. Um, you know, my technique is and Natalie, you did just get a gift, because I have never said that out loud to anyone. I did write it in the book, but I've never said that thing out loud. So your podcast listeners just got a gift, and I've done a ton of podcasts, a ton of radio interviews, and no one's ever asked me sort of distill something that way.
Have you ever faced a life-changing decision? One where everything before felt like chaos and everything after became crystal clear? On our bonus episode, Hope Mueller shares something she's never said out loud before. A transformative process she's used during her toughest challenges. Here's the kicker. Hope has been on countless podcasts and interviews, but this insight is exclusive to Unsealing You. She takes us behind the scenes of her personal journey, revealing the single most powerful technique that helped her navigate life's hardest moments and come out stronger. If you're feeling stuck, overwhelmed, or just need a guidepost to make that next big move in your career, business, or life, this bonus content is for you. Don't miss this gift of wisdom. Head to the Unsealing Zone now to unlock Hope's empowering strategy and take a bold step forward. Your transformation could be just one decision away. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Unsealing You. If today's conversation inspired you, make sure to download this episode so you can revisit it anytime and subscribe to the show so you never miss a new episode. For those of you ready to take your ambition to the next level, I invite you to consider joining our membership community, where you'll get exclusive bonus content, early access to episodes, and much more. Until next time, remember, it's time to take radical responsibility for your life and unseal your potential to watch the positive ripple effect unfold.